19th, 2019. If all supervisors could please press their attend buttons and silence any cell phones. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Supervisor Locke. If you could please all rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the invocation by Supervisor Locke.
We ask for your presence to be with us as we meet tonight. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas as we seek to work together. Amen.
Thank you, Supervisor Locke. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda for this evening. Please note that it is the agenda with the title Second Amendment on the top. I will call on Supervisor Albrecht for a motion.
I move to approve. I move to approve for this amended agenda.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next item, and that is a time during each meeting in which we give an opportunity from anyone from the public to speak on any item on the agenda or any issue under county jurisdiction. Is there anyone who wishes to speak tonight? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? I'll say one final time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on anything on the agenda or anything under county jurisdiction? Then we'll close that portion of the meeting and we'll move on down to the next item, which is correspondence. I'll call on Clerk Ertmer.
Thank you, Chairman. The first thing on there under correspondence is why we had to amend it for the second time. The report that was the zoning report in February, report number 001, and then corresponding ordinance. Because of the timing last month of our meeting in the Planning and Zoning Committee, the Planning and Zoning Committee was meeting on this particular topic after we sent out the county board agenda. And so when we did the agenda, we sent out the initial report because we needed to have something in the packet. And then I should have followed up with the new report after the Planning and Zoning Committee met, but failed to do that. So unfortunately, we didn't get the completed report sent out. So I spoke with Corporation Counsel Miller, and just for clerical purposes and to make it clear and clean for everybody, we just wanted to bring it to your attention and give you a completed copy. And then I asked Executive Harris, and he signed that for us tonight. So there won't have to be a vote. We just wanted to clear that up for everybody. Then we do have some zoning petitions. We have a petition for zoning amendment from Tony Welnicki in the town of Winnebago, requesting a zoning change from R1 with floodplain to R1 without floodplain. That's referred to planning and zoning. A petition for zoning amendment from Carrie Rowe. That is for an amendment to the Winnebago County Floodplain Zoning Code, Chapter 26, to effect a change in the Sawyer Creek floodplain maps. That's referred to planning and zoning. Notice of claim from Midstate Sign Service LLC for damage to a service truck. That's referred to Personnel and Finance. Claim from Ryan Callis, county employee, for damage to his personal vehicle while at work after it was struck by a solid waste department vehicle, referred to Personnel and Finance. Claim from Frank Kearney for damage to his mailbox that was struck by a county highway department vehicle. That is referred to Personnel and Finance. Claim from Mary Jo M. Schrader for injuries sustained after falling on an icy sidewalk outside the Sheriff's Department, referred to the Personnel and Finance Committee. A claim from Ethan Runkle regarding damage to a mailbox caused by a county snowplow, referred to Personnel and Finance. You received a thank you note from a county retiree, Kathy Buffington. She said, "To the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors, thank you for recognizing my years of service and for the historical book of Winnebago County. Your thoughtfulness was a lovely surprise in the mail. Sincerely, Kathy Buffington." When we send them that commendation resolution, we always include one of the county history books. So that's what she's referring to. And then you have one resolution from Door County supporting National Estuarine Research Reserve, NERR designation for Northeast Wisconsin, and that resolution is referred to the Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Clerk Ertmer. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Are there any reports from any committees, commissions, and boards? I'll call first on Supervisor Lautenschläger, followed by Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was fortunate, along with 3 other supervisors, to attend the NACO Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. on March 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Supervisor Norton and myself serve on the NACO Human Services and Safety Steering Committee, which we held, we attended our public meeting on Saturday morning, followed by the business meeting on Saturday afternoon. On Sunday, we attended educational presentations and workshops, and on Monday and Tuesday, we went up to the Hill and met with our legislators. The Wisconsin delegation was fortunate that we were able to meet with 8 out of our 9 legislators or their staff. The only legislative that we didn't meet with was Representative Setzenberger. We presented the legislators and their staff with the top NACO legislative priorities, which you have on your desk. I'm not going to go through them. And this year we did Wisconsin County Association, WCA, did something different than we normally did. We always presented the NACO priorities. This year, the Wisconsin delegacy added the WCA's top 3 issues, asking for some federal help on those. Those being the child welfare crisis, asking for more money and help to help with the child welfare crisis, asking for help and support for county priorities on the federal infrastructure package, and asking for some help with the federal grants for public safety as to modernizing the Wisconsin 911 system, getting all the counties up to date with the new system. So this year's conference was very educational, and I was glad I went. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lautenschläger. Next speaker is Vice Chairman Egan, followed by Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. We'll have a legislative meeting on Monday at 8:30 at the James P. Coughlin Building. I think it's something that all of you would be interested in on this sex offender thing. I know we've been talking about it, but Representative Schra did promise me that they would be there this time. He ended up sick last time, the time before we canceled, but they did promise, unless something goes wrong, he will be there. Most of you know that this last one was released, or whatever, not released, but put in a spot up in Wolf River. Yeah, but there's word out that there possibly is another one coming out real shortly. I don't know for sure. Maybe they can enlighten us more on that. And they've also had a bill, Assembly Bill 55, that maybe we'll get some more answers on, that will be pertaining not to this county, but all of them. So it's open to everyone. Like I said, there's only certain ones that are able to vote there, but there can be a lot of discussion, and so hopefully it'll come 8:30 at the James P. Coughlin Building next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to report Friday, March 8th, I attended the Spring 2019 Local Officials Meeting of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation on their Tri-County 441 expansion project held in Appleton. And I'm pleased to report to the board that this project, that big interchange and the associated changes east and west of the interchange will be completed in 2019. I would also like to report on Thursday, March 14th, I attended the Wisconsin Counties Association Regional Legislative Meeting held in Appleton with the WCA staff discussing the 2019 executive budget. And without uttering a formal endorsement of the governor's budget, it was apparent from the WCA staff presentation that with minor proposed additions, that they were in agreement with the governor's budget and are prepared to observe just how it is going to be reconciled with the legislator's will. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker, Supervisor Snyder, followed by Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, as Supervisor Lautenschlager said, I was privileged to go to Washington a couple of weeks ago. One thing I noticed when we were saying the pledge that Larry and Mike Norton were looking at me, I was privileged to be chosen to say the pledge in the Central Region caucus meeting on Monday morning. And when I was chosen, I said to the chair, I will do this if you say it my way. There is no comma between one nation and under God. And so that's the way I said it. And after the caucus, I had quite a few people come up and say, thank you very much for saying it the way it's intended. So let's, this board, put forth the same effort. The Pledge of Allegiance says one nation under God, not one nation under God. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Snyder. Next speaker, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll report on my going to the NACO Legislative Conference a little different. I attended a briefing which my other colleagues didn't on the last day of the conference, Capitol Hill briefing, Reimaging Healthcare in County Jails, which county leaders got together to talk about the roles that counties have in healthcare services in jails. And one of the things they main emphasis of this in the conference was that individuals who are in the jail are waiting trial, counties have to pay for health care. And the National Association of Sheriffs and NACO have tried to get Congress to change that so that if you are eligible still for veteran benefits or Medicaid, that you will continue to have that and until you are not just in jail for waiting for trial, but convicted. This session was taped, was videotaped. I would encourage everyone to go to the NACO website to see it, especially those on the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, because I heard from someone from a large county, from a rural county in Iowa, how they're dealing with the different aspects of health care in their jails, especially dealing with mental health. So that was very beneficial, and I would hope our Judiciary Committee members would take the time to look at it and maybe give a report to us about what they thought about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from February 25th, 2019. Is there a motion? There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion, changes, adjustments? Then we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down. Next item on the agenda, County Executive's Report, followed by the County Executive's appointment. I'll call on Executive Harris.
I'm actually going to start out with a question of corporate counsel for you to look at. Tonight we have a lot of capital expenditures on the agenda that normally require a vote of 3/4 of the body. And but right now we have 2 vacant positions on the board. So in my mind, there's a question whether we need 3/4 of a full 36-member board, which would be 27 affirmative votes. Yeah, which is impossible. Or do we need 3/4 of a board reduced by 2 seats for the absent seats, which would be 25.5 or 26 votes? And I think that's a question we probably need to know the answer to before we vote on the capital items. If we can vote on them tonight, it probably will take a near unanimous vote to pass any of those items through the board. And
Suspend the rules.
A motion and a second to suspend the rules. We could vote on that now. I do think it does make sense if we hold off on the motion until we get to that portion of the meeting. So I think that's a fair point, and then,
yeah, I think that raises additional questions, though, because the requirement for a three-quarters vote is an exception to the levy limits. It's not our rule. It's a state rule. And I don't know if we have the ability to suspend that or not. I would think perhaps we do not, but that would be another thing to research if you can. And I did actually, rather than citing, there's a lot of worthy items in the agenda, and I usually cite one or two that I think are especially worthy of consideration. But there were some questions about the capital items, and I want to give just a really thumbnail sketch of how the process works. The department heads submit to the administration, finance, and myself, their request for capital items. And those are vetted to some extent. It doesn't mean that I'm approving or recommending the item, but I think it's worthy to bring to the board if I allow it to go into the capital plan. So it may be that I have mixed feelings about it, but I think it's at least something the board should be allowed to consider. And part of the process, too, is making sure that the amount of capital items scheduled for any given year is not excessive. We have on occasion asked people to move a project from one year to a later year to help smooth out the requests. But that then is presented to the board with some cost numbers attached. But it also then has to, it's already gone through their committees. But then it goes back to the Committee of Jurisdiction for a vote and to the P&F Committee for a vote, and then comes back to the board for a second presentation and a vote of the whole board. And then they come forward for that final vote of the board when the department head is ready to present those items to the board. So that's what controls the timing. It isn't a matter of any sort of priority that my office is setting or that finance is setting on the capital items. It's really a matter of when the department head is willing to and ready to bring them forward to the board. But to give you some perspective on where we stand, the total capital plan for this year has proposed bonding of $10,700,000. Many years, what's in the capital plan doesn't always make it in its entirety to the board. Sometimes items, for instance, facilities some years can't do all the projects on their list, so they put some into the next year. Same thing can happen with highway, where perhaps the state and federal monies don't line up. So a project initially listed for one year might end up in a subsequent year. But to give you some perspective on where we stand, even if all of the items in the capital plan for 2019 are approved, our projected debt at the end of the period is $36,298,000. Our allowable debt limit, according to the state rules, it's set at 5% of our equalized value, is $673 million. So we're currently at 5.6% of our allowable debt. So we really are a county that's in very good shape with regard to debt. And we, in fact, have over $21 million in our general fund balance. So if you look at how much outstanding debt versus how much we have in reserves, the debt exceeds the reserves, but not by an enormous amount. And I just wanted to put that out there so that there would be some perspective on the capital items. And I'm not going to steal any of his thunder, but I know the sheriff is making a presentation. I think I've seen a similar presentation recently at Rotary, and one of the things you're going to realize is how many people performed excellently and made a major contribution. And the sheriff will address them in total. I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but there is one story in particular that would be easily overlooked, so I wanted to mention it briefly. We had one plow driver, Chris Williams, who heard about the pileup forming over the radio. So he put out the wings on his snow plow and drove in kind of an S curve down the road. And I'm sure the people behind him thought, what the heck is this man doing? I'm sure they had some more choice words than that. But he basically made it so none of the cars behind him could pass him heading towards this pileup. And then he just slowed his speed down slower and slower as he did this. And that reduced the number of people that could end up in that pileup. He's just one of many, many people that did excellent things. But it's that quick thinking and resourcefulness shown by all these people that made that less of a tragic incident than it might otherwise have been. And I wanted to mention that. I do have two appointments. I'm appointing the new Director of Veteran Services with the board approval. It's Jeff Buchholz. And Jeff is in the back of the room. And if you'd like to just say 2 or 3 words so they can identify you and
Good evening, everybody. Just want to say I am truly appreciative of this opportunity to continue to serve the veterans in my community. I have been with the county for almost 6 years now, and before my time with the county, I served in the Air Force for 22 years, so I know veterans and I know this community. Winnebago County is known across the state as one of the leaders in administrating veteran benefits. And I look forward to pressing forward full throttle to continue to serve the veterans in our community and get them all the benefits they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Jeffrey Buchholz to the County Veterans Service Office role. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations and look forward to working with you, Mr. Buchholz.
I also have a reappointment to the Winnebago County Housing Authority. I'd like to reappoint Robert Keller to that authority for a term that will expire in April of 2024.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And then if I can ask, do we know?
Yes.
With the chair's
Please.
permission.
Please go ahead and I'll add a comment, I think, afterward in regards to it.
In regard to your questions regarding the bond issues, we need 3/4 of members elect. That would be 3/4 of the 36, so we would need 27. However, my understanding is that Chairman Ramos is going to be nominating someone to fill one of the seats, empty seats.
Correct.
So that means we would have enough people to go forward. However, it would have to be unanimous.
That's correct. And so I wanted to follow up because Supervisor Albrecht had started a motion in regards to suspending the rules, and then Supervisor Wingren brought up whether or not it was the right time. Technically, there wasn't a wrong or right time. Actually, what he was doing was perfectly appropriate, but I think it bears some explanation, because if you were to do it before we take up any resolution, then what we would want to do is to suspend the rules to change any resolution that required a three-fourths vote of the membership to the requirement of only three-fourths vote of the members present for all resolutions on the agenda this evening. So that would be the motion you would do. Otherwise, you would be required to suspend the rules, which would be another option, before each individual motion. So I just wanted to make sure you clarify. The other thing I wanted to make sure you knew is if there was a motion to suspend the rules, that would require a 2/3 vote here for it. Yes, he'll need to be sworn in before we are up to the 27, and that will actually be coming up very shortly. Okay.
I'll move to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Albrecht. Okay, so moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is County Board Chairman's report, followed by the chairman's appointments. So first of all, a number of individuals who asked to be excused tonight. Supervisor Borchard asked to be excused, Supervisor Finch, Supervisor Robel, Supervisor Shorsey, Supervisor Lenz, Supervisor Smith, and Supervisor Fari. So that's why we're getting to the number of the 26. Just wanted to remind everyone of the county board tour. So please put on your calendars, the county board tour is coming up about 2 months away now. So that's Monday, May 20th. That's why I'm reminding you again. I'll do it every month. So it's Monday, May 20th, and that's the Monday immediately following our May business meeting, the 21st. And then just an update. As I mentioned, shortly we'll be voting on an appointment to fill the vacancy of former Supervisor Wallen. But an update on the other vacancy, just wanted to make you aware, that's District 9. We have put out a posting for it twice. We don't currently have any other candidates. We will continue to do so, and we are actually going to pursue some avenues with social media as well. So just to make you aware that currently we don't have any candidates. Certainly, once we do, I'll reach out to those individuals. And if we have a future appointment, I'll bring it on a future agenda. But I'll keep updating you each meeting as to where we're at with that process. So moving on down now to the County Board Chairman's appointments. The first one is County Board Supervisor, District 14, for Kevin Conrad from 1735 Kraber Street, Oshkosh. All of you should have received his CV on your desk. I just wanted to let you know that there were actually 3 candidates. I was very impressed, met with all these individuals. So what I can tell you is there were 3 good candidates, and it was a matter of picking one of them. And certainly, Mr. Conrad did impress me, both with his background as well as the interaction we met for coffee, as I did with all the other candidates as well. You'll see on his CV, he has a long-standing history in the Oshkosh Police Department. Currently as a police lieutenant. He's actually served in another number of capacities as police lieutenant, as well as the public information officer for quite a number of years for the Oshkosh Police Department as well. So, Mr. Conrad, if you could please step forward, and we will, well, first, we have to do a vote, of course. So, before you do, actually, I'd entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Kevin Conrad to fill the vacancy in Supervisory District 14. Second. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Please, Mr. Conrad. And what we'll now do is do the oath of office. So if you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kevin Conrad,
I, Kevin Conrad,
having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor, District 14,
having been appointed to the office of County Board Supervisor, District 14,
swear that I will support the Constitution
swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
of said office to the best of my ability.
of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Congratulations, Supervisor Conrad, and we certainly look forward to working with you over the upcoming year. Next item is, we have a couple of more appointments, and that is several appointments to the Winnebago County Communication and Information System Advisory Committee, E911. And those are Chief Mike Stanley, the City of Oshkosh Fire Department, Chief Brian Harbison, Village of Fox Crossing Fire Department, Chief Jeff Bernice, City of Neenah Police Department. I'd entertain a motion for these appointments. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, and that is the presentation on the purchase of the Netzer property, south 20-acre parcel. I'll call on our Parks Director, Rob Way. Director Way?
And so I'm in front of you again on this. All right. I gave a summary page out to everybody. Hopefully you received it. If not, I have an extra copy up here. So it looks like everybody has one. What I'm going to do tonight is, for the most part, give you that summary. A lot of this was covered 2 previous times in it was the budget meeting and then again in December. So a lot of the facts, the items of interest affecting this topic have been given to you already. However, I'm going to give you the summary of it, and starting out by, if you'll turn to page 3, I'm going to familiarize you again where the property lies. And as explained, this is a 20-acre parcel currently owned by the Netzer family out on County Road Y. It is property that sits below, as you'll see on the map, the 20-acre parcel that had been acquired in October. And that parcel adjoins the 20-acre north parcel, I'll call it, adjoins the Expo Center, and was primarily intended to service some of the expansion needs and the conflicts that we have at the Expo Center with the RV parking and what we're looking at doing with the stadium with larger events and so forth. So this is a separate parcel. This is that parcel termed the subject property that sits below it. That's 20 acres. It's comprised of about 60 acres of farmland and about 3.5 acres. As you can see, there is a farmstead that sits approximately in the middle of it. And before I go too further, there is no intent to use that farmhouse. It's intended as part of this plan to tear that down. There are some viable sheds there that we would utilize, however. But one of the key reasons why we are looking to purchase that property, as explained, if you are familiar with it, you can turn back to page 1. I'm going to start going through the reasons. And again, one of the key reasons is the egress that it provides us, going in with that driveway that services currently the Netzer farm. That's important in what we look to do with it. And it would provide us, as it termed in item 1 on page 1, it's important that we provide services, EMS and law enforcement services, back to that back 20 acres. We intend to put parking on it. We intend to put RV camping on it. And right now, about the only way you can get around into it is through the back acreage of the Expo Center on a dirt road, following the long way around, if you want to call it that. So by the time, if emergency services were required on that back 20 acre, the service, law enforcement, is going to have to go weed through lanes of RV parking and weave back and forth all the way back there. And it's going to take quite some time. With this road, they'll get there in minutes rather than 15 minutes possibly, back to that back 20 acreage. Again, this is the Sheriff's Department that would service that. This lies outside the Expo Center, so you're not going to have necessarily sheriff's services on site like you would with the PD in one of the bigger events. So they're going to have to get access, and it's likely going to come from East County Road Y. Another reason to look at purchasing this property with good reason is that we would like to avoid conflicts that might arise with, say, use that might be contrary, might be in conflict with what we normally do with the Expo, which are large events, a lot of traffic, and a lot of noise. And putting, say, apartments next door to it is likely to be, we're going to have conflicts. We do currently, actually, there are complaints that do come out of the apartment complex that sits to the southwest of us. It's not a profuse amount, but when we do have concerts, typically we'll have a few complaints out of that. This property sits quite a bit closer than that apartment complex, so there is some likelihood if it were developed as a residential property, I'm thinking the neighbors may not be too satisfied with an excuse that put up with it. So we'd like to avoid that conflict by purchasing that property. Next, in the past presentations, another reason for purchasing this property, this extends to the UW extension. They are, the lease that they currently have, I believe it's through the DNR, and it's on property on Sherman Road. It's expiring at the end of this year. And, well, this is out of my territory. I don't want to go into it too much, but there is property here that could be made available as a permanent site for the community garden. There's about 4.5 acres. If you want to look at the map, it sits on what would be your left side coming in on the road. About 4.5 acres that have been tested soil-wise. It's appropriate. Parking could be put there. There is some need for investment as far as removal of trees and so forth, but it's very viable, and it would be something that we could share with Extension as a permanent replacement for what they're losing on Sherman Road. So finally, the last reason, the fourth reason for really needing this property stems out of a need to get parking accommodated on the expo side. And by that, I mean currently we are, for our larger events, we put them in the community park. Everybody's familiar with Life Fest. We fill up about half the park with parking. That was common with Country USA as well. And actually that started what is a situation we have with parking in the community park. I told you we need to get it out, and now it's actually happening that we must get it out. About a year ago, I was informed by the DNR that we have some issues with having parking paid for in the park for non-outdoor related activities. The expo is not considered a outdoor activity, a recreational activity, because it's not a park. It's not something that that is serviced as far as what the DNR recognizes. So this stems from what we have in the park. We went with a LWCF grant back in 68 and 72. There are two grants tied to that park. And that grant comes from the National Park Service, and it's administered by the DNR. Everything was fine through the years until we started putting parking in there, paid for parking, and it was not necessarily examined where that comes into conflict with the grant and its codicils, its covenants. But you cannot use a property that has been funded through LWCF funds for alternative purposes, and paid for parking is not one of those. It was determined by the DNR. So, in talking with the DNR, and it's just recently, last week, where they came in with a decision that we have to get it out of the park, but we have some time on this. We're still talking to them, but it's looking like we can do 4 years. We have to limit the amount of events, so the ones that are in there can continue with the idea that, yes, we can put a couple more events in there as far as the stadium goes. We've been talking about large concerts going in there. So we'll be able to service those for a time with what we have in the park. Again, paid for parking. However, there's another condition that we have to take some of the revenue brought out of that parking for our purposes for the park, directly for the park. And what those projects are, they could range from playground to putting in, improving our natural area. So a lot of latitude, but it has to be going into the park. There's other stipulations, but those are the key ones. We have to do this via an agreement. I think that we'll be able to accommodate it. I've talked about how we'll be redoing the property, the two 20-acre parcels, if we purchase this second one, that is intended to go in turf grass. So what we've done in the community park can easily be accommodated on the other side of the road. So we do have an outlet, we do have a relief, but I do have to say that it's no longer a reason, but a must almost, that we need to get parking out of the community park. Again, I want to make the distinction, it's paid for parking. So you can park in the park, we can have a mass event, much like the Mungs, but they do not charge for their parking. So it's not totally out of the park, but again, just to make that distinction, it's when it's paid for and it's a non-outdoor rec-related event that it is no longer allowed. So with that, just to finish up, The asking price, which has been accepted by the Netzers, is $310,000. If approved, this would be closed on in April. So at this time, I'll take questions.
We'll open it up for questions. I see Supervisor Lautenschlager.
So that asking price, that's less than what, so we've come down in the price since the last time you made the presentation, correct?
Yeah, not the last time. The first time I
Well,
presented it was.
first time, right.
Yes, 320,000.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's 310.
Right. So basically, we need this property for, well, kind of on a safety issue, because we need another route out of the fairgrounds in case there's some kind of emergency or whatever. But also, it's gonna give us some more land, and it's not because we need more land for Life Fest. It's because we need more land for future expansion if we want to get some bigger events and that out there. Is this
We will be
correct?
using it. We'll need it. Life Fest, would pretty much, their needs will be met with that north 20 acres, but again, we're looking at approximately, and we're working towards a number of around 33,000 possibly for the stadium. And when you put that out into the amount of cars,
Right.
and then put that on our property, you definitely need it on the expo side. Every bit of it. It would be accommodated with the park combination, but again, that's
Right,
not
but
going to be possible.
Right, but it would
Yeah.
also help in future for some bigger events if we,
Which
that we
we
want.
hope
I mean,
to
that's-
get. The
that's so-
PGI event would be another event
Right.
like that.
So it's
Yeah.
mainly, we want this for future growth is what we're looking at. Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Lautenschlager. Next speaker, Supervisor Albrecht, followed by Supervisor Warnke.
So does the property owners that are behind the Netzer property, will they still have a right of way to get into their property?
I believe I'm not certain, and I think you're talking about Walters
I'm talking
Farms.
about the young Keenest boy has a piece of property back in there, and I was gonna build a shop, so will there be zoning restrictions come in effect too now?
I'm not familiar with their property, but it's not, I thought they were accessing it via the north property. Kaufman owns it to the north, and that I know of, I
Their
didn't,
properties are to the north of there. It's behind Netzer's.
it would have to be to the north of Netzer's. Yeah. So there is, Carol Kaufman's property is to the north of that, and that would be a route coming off, that they could access it from the north.
Okay, and then the vendors parking for like at the different events there, do they have to pay for parking too then, or can they charge for parking at the?
When you
like
say
different
vendors, Dave?
Vendors come to different things I was just out there to a fishing show and stuff. They didn't charge me parking, but I've been out there where vendors charge for parking already through the years. So does that mean nobody can charge for vendors for parking?
Well, not in the park, now, the expo side, anything goes in the sense of what the promoter wants to bring and put on the property for charging. As far as, again, the park side, the only exception would be if parking is not charged for. Now, admission, again, let me point out, the Hmong Festival, Soccer Festival, is a perfect example. They can charge admissions, and that's the means that the Hmongs create revenue, but they do not charge for their parking.
Thank you Supervisor Albrecht. Next speaker is Supervisor Warnke, followed by Vice Chairman Egan.
I can't help but think that this is all being done to accommodate Life Fest. When this whole thing started about the racetrack, I was fighting very much to keep that racetrack, and of course I lost, and I was questioning why we couldn't buy more land. And we spent $1.5 million for that racetrack, and we had a good following. We had a lot of people who enjoyed that racetrack. And now you got rid of the racetrack, and all of a sudden you're starting to buy land. And I just don't agree with it. I'm sorry. I think we were not told the truth, and I don't believe these stories about how you're going to be getting all these big shows out there. There are plenty of places around this area where they're gonna have big shows. If you do, I think it's great, but I doubt it's gonna happen. And, it just doesn't, you made a lot of people unhappy when you took that racetrack out. Maybe the management wasn't so good, but you could have gotten new management, and you could have done all this and kept that racetrack. You talk about community gardens. That's a pretty big park there, and you certainly got a lot of area to put community gardens in that park. And it doesn't have to, we don't have to purchase land for it either. It's there, all you gotta do is make room for it. But I'm sorry, but I will be voting against this. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Supervisor Warnke. Next speaker, Vice Chairman Egan, followed by Supervisor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. I think Supervisor Albert maybe already asked one of my questions to a point, but like, couldn't they go ahead instead of say parking, just say admission? And just combine in the same thing? It's the same thing, Rob, you know that. I can charge admission and then you get to park your car in there. If you don't pay at the gate, you don't get to park in there.
Well, I've not brought that up with the DNR.
Okay.
But admission, again, is being applied correctly by the MUNG. To
Right.
do it differently might bring it into question.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask is about this DNR. You said you just found out about that this last week?
Their decision came down. I said I started looking into it a year ago and talking with the DNR.
Okay, because I know while you were talking about the first piece we bought and now this piece, nothing was ever brought up, and all of a sudden, the DNR was brought into this. This is the only reason I'm asking
No, their
this.
decision came down last Monday.
Okay.
I've been prompting them for it for months and months. I just said, you have to give it. It came out of Madison.
Why did they get involved in on?
Because they oversee the LWCF funds for the Park Service, National Park Service.
So you're not going to do anything over on the other side if you can get funds over there from them?
As far as
Is the fairgrounds?
Expo side.
If you can
well,
get
no,
any
these-
grants for doing anything over there, you won't touch any of it for over
You
on that
can't
side?
get you can't get LWCF grants. There might be other grants. We do apply occasionally for other grants over there, but haven't had any success with that. Being the type of facility it is with the operation, I mean, it is, I don't want to say it's for profit, but it falls under a whole different category.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. Next speaker, Supervisor Ellis, followed by Supervisor Powers.
Some of my questions are somewhat with Chairman Egan, but what I'm asking is the DNR is getting involved now. After all this time that we've been buying this property, do we have letters that says what the DNR really is asking us to do? Can we get some letters here?
Correct, we have to, actually. I mentioned that it has to be an agreement. Since it's just come up, what they propose is that we put together, again, the parameters are that it be 4 years. I'm going to try for more. There's a reason to go for a little bit longer if we can get it.
I'd like to see a letter from the DNR on that too. I mean, that the county board can all have, and
Sure.
seeing what they want there. And as far as the 20 acres, that'll be $15,000 an acre.
Thank you, Supervisor Ellis. Next speaker, Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Binder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would encourage our board not to look back at votes that we've taken in the past and that didn't turn out the way necessarily we wanted them. As a brand-new supervisor, only on the job about 2 months, I made a trip out to the racetrack. It was poorly attended. There was like maybe a quarter of the thing. To keep basing our votes on something moving forward, on something we've already voted against, and it's already torn down, it's already gone, is not looking forward. Yeah, it was poorly managed, it was poorly attended, in spite of the impassioned pleas that we heard from citizens who did enjoy it. I was out there. The stands were a quarter of the way filled. It was not good management. We spent $1 million and we were supposed to be getting back something like $100,000 a year for 10 years. We got nowhere near that much for the first 3 years, and after that, forget it. There was like, it trickled in. There was no way anyone was ever going to pay us back the $1 million that we put into that racetrack. And I would really encourage the rest of the supervisors, stop beating a dead horse. The racetrack is gone. no pun intended. The racetrack is gone, and we need to move forward and make votes based on what we have now and what we could have in the future, not what's already gone and dead. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker, Supervisor Binder, followed by Supervisor Gabbard.
Just to kind of emphasize on what Rob was saying, the reason we're losing the community garden is because the DNR says that's got to go back to a nature setting. That we had for 25 years, and somebody must have read the contract when that land was donated, and that land is supposed to be a nature area. So after 25 years of having a community garden, the DNR is giving us a 1-year lease to get out of there because that land has to go back to basically the way it was, just nature's grass growing. And so it would be nice to get a permanent site in a piece of land that the county does own, so that after you basically put the driving lanes in there, I mean, they don't actually have parking lots, you have driving lanes, so that way you can drive to your section to harvest your produce and put it in your trunk. And we don't provide water on Sherman Road, they bring their own water to water. They have 137 gardeners that use that. We used to have 160, but the land was low in some areas, so you really couldn't grow a crop in like 23 of the spots, so we eliminated them. So, you know, my biggest fear of that land is you'll get another apartment complex, because if you look out there, there's been like 2 or 3 apartment complexes built, and if you build that next to basically where Life Fest is, I think this year they got 5 concerts planned there for Red Rock. You know, it's going to get bigger and it's going to grow, and even if that land doesn't get used or utilized for the next 10 or 15 years, I surely would hate to see a 100-unit apartment complex get built there, and then all of a sudden we have this loud music and they're calling the city of Oshkosh and complaining because of the noise ordinance. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker, Supervisor Gabbard.
I wasn't going to say anything about the racetrack, but you know I was a supporter of it, so I'm moving on, Rob. So I have a couple questions for you. One is a statement. I think this land is pricey at 15.5 because it was pricey when we bought the other 20 acres. But I was hoping that the county would buy the Netzer property. So that being said, are you going to keep this in the town of Oshkosh for a while?
Yeah, there's no intent to have it annexed. There's no need to, actually.
Okay.
Not at this time, at least.
Not at this time,
Correct.
because you can do a lot with it for parking that, yeah, okay, you get what I'm saying there.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm glad that you are looking into this. I just think it's a little bit pricey, so I'm going to stew this over in my mind before I.
Well, I can interject that on the other end of County Road Y, where the Gabert Rouge property and the Rupno property, I think I brought some numbers in here,
You
and they
did.
were 3/4 mil, and the other one was a mil. That
And
was
there
the
was-
asking price, and they weren't
And
going to
they were,
negotiate.
it was
Yeah.
wet. Some of it was wet,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yeah, and I think they were even 16-acre parcels. For some reason, they weren't even
So at that
20.
point, I agree with you, this is a steal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabbard. Next speaker, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess 2 reasons I think we need this is, A, the point number 4, the eliminating the need to utilize the community park for parking. Whether it's DNR generator or general, I don't think we should use parkland, that's been used parkland for years now, as parking lot. I hate when the city of Oshkosh does it with Menominee Park. I would hope we require land to have parking available when we will have large events at the Expo Center, at the stadium and other places. And the second reason, and the second reason is on, the number 1 reason that Rob listed here, is acquiring an egress route at a critical location along East County Road Y for purposes of improving the operational functions of promoters during the major events, as well as enhancing the safety and security of program attendees. And I guess I would like to ask the sheriff, if we would have that, how better would it be to have that road for when we do have large events at the stadium and at the Expo Center?
Sheriff Motz, do you have a response?
Could you restate the question, please? Not that I wasn't listening.
Well, it says the number 1 reason, and I didn't read the whole thing, but I can, acquire an egress route at a critical location along East County Road Y for purposes of improving the operational functions of promoters during major events, as well as enhancing the safety and security of program attendees through increased means of accessibility provided to EMS and law enforcement agencies. You're the chief law enforcement agency of this county. I believe your department's going to have to enforce it when we have events there. By buying this land and having this road, how much easier and better would be for doing the job you have to do?
Well, you know, the lessons we learned from having Country USA there was that Y itself is not designed to take all of that traffic. That's probably a bigger issue than a perimeter road or a road around the event itself. Although that is very important, there needs to be improvements to Y if we have substantial events there that would include pedestrian traffic. And we have the same issue now with the current location of Country USA, Rock USA. So my bigger concern would be why, not necessarily a perimeter road or access roads.
Thank you, Sheriff Motz, and thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next speaker, Supervisor Konecki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a perfect opportunity for the county. It's adjacent to our property we already own, and also, we're not just buying for now, we're buying for the future also. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Konecki. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and conclude the presentations. Thank you, Director Wade. Thank you very much. We have one other presentation tonight, and that is the review of the February 24th, 2019 Highway 41 crash by Sheriff John Motz. Sheriff?
Thank you. All right, it's going to take us just a little bit to get set up, but you're going to see a video. That video is a compilation of what we pulled from video from our body cameras, what we pulled from cameras that are out on USI or at Interstate 41, and then squad camera video, and then some still photos. It is, it's a bit emotional, or expect it to be a little bit emotional. There are things that you will see that, and you will hear that are designed to, this is real life. And part of the issue when we had our first responders from the sheriff's office view this, that we're on scene, it's difficult because never before in law enforcement, other than squad car camera, did we relive incidents. Well, now it's like, it's right there. And they feel themselves right back in that same moment. And so it's stressful. And certainly it's something that we're cognizant of and we need to prepare for. What we did after the crash was we held after action reviews individually. Law enforcement did their own. We did our own at the sheriff's office. EMS did their own. The fire departments did their own. And each entity did their own. We're going to get together collectively, discuss what we did right, what we did wrong, what we can improve on, and we'll make improvements from there. I do want to recognize the town of Neenah Fire Chief Ed King, who was on scene. He's in back. Did a phenomenal job taking care of the on-scene fire department response. Just absolutely phenomenal. And you'll see, I think actually we see Ed in the video. Looks like him anyway. And I also want to recognize Captain Lara Vendola and Chief Deputy Todd Christofferson. They were really the incident commanders for law enforcement. And you will see based on the timeline how quickly and with care and compassion this incident was taken care of. We'll start out with the video and then we'll move into a real brief PowerPoint. Yeah, please. Sorry about that. Oh, we can be, okay. That's okay. All right. We have phenomenal people serving our county, and that's a testament to it. All right, we're going to move into, I'll go as quickly as I can with the PowerPoint and just talk a little bit about what happened on that particular day, how it occurred. So we were receiving reports of whiteout conditions from the National Weather Service, not only receiving them, but we were experiencing them. So we put that on Facebook. If all of you, for those of you that don't follow us, I encourage you to do so. A lot of information. We try to put out as accurate information and as much as we can right here. Our news stations actually follow us and get stories from this. We beat them. I mean, they're not the breaking news anymore. It's social media. That's just the time we live in. Between 11:08 and 11:10, we received 3 911 calls for a crash on 41 southbound near G. By 11:16, we received a total of 40 911 calls at that same location. And here's a timeline. It's probably kind of hard to see, but it starts out as a report of a 2-vehicle crash at 11:08, and by 11:26, we have a multi-casualty incident declared, which activates things in the medical world that I didn't totally understand, but when we called it a mass casualty incident to the person that runs that for the hospitals in the area, her response was, "Holy crap." And then all kinds of resources were brought to hospitals. And then we go through the process of the detours coordinated. At first we used Highway 76 as a detour, but that was in very, very bad shape. And vehicles were getting stuck. I believe a state patrol vehicle was struck on Highway 76, and we went all the way to 10 and 45, which was better. But still really poor conditions. Stars Cabaret, a gentleman's club, opens up their business as a warming shelter because it's right across the barrier. And, there's a lot of jokes going around about that, but they were, truly very crucial in taking care of those people that were ambulatory and could be taken off the highway. We prepare for a long closure. We estimate 12 to 15 hours at that point, and then we confirm that there's one deceased at 11:57, and we begin to mark all of the vehicles and that systematic approach of checking and double checking vehicles to make sure people are taken care of that are inside those vehicles. And as we saw, we had tow trucks pulling cars apart so we could get at people. Multiple jaws of life were used at the scene to try to get at people and extricate them. The crash itself, so this is the order. We tend to the injured parties. Scene safety is done at the same time. The highway, as the county exec stated, the highway plow operator was instrumental not only in that location, but we had another multi-vehicle crash occur on the 41 bridge that was basically just a few minutes after this one, and we had another highway plow pull behind that one, or I'm sure we would have lost squads or had more incidents occur from that. And then we begin to gather that information, collect evidence, and then the overall investigation. We had some extremely talented accident reconstruction people working that day that just really took charge of that piece of it, and the sketch drawing that we have to do for every crash, it's amazing with all the vehicles on there, and is truly a depiction of what was seen at the scene. And then we clear the queue, so that's what's behind the crash. Dane County, we learned from that crash, it was a few years ago, where people were stuck on the highway for 8 hours or more. Well, that's what law enforcement and fire and everybody does in this business. We learned from other people's mistakes and issues and made sure that got cleared as quickly as possible, and then set up that long-term detour. And then we still had all the other calls for service, so we're calling in people and asking other agencies to take calls for us, and they were all very instrumental in doing so. This is just a depiction of the scene, and that's a timeline of what occurs. Neenah PD was instrumental, as well as the city of Neenah, by allowing us to use that location to store vehicles. That was, it was a godsend, because where are we going to put that many vehicles to try to even get them to all of the storage yards of all of the tow companies? I don't know that there would have been enough room there. So really was perfect fit. So we reroute traffic, and then the detour and clearing the queue. Okay. We have major drifting issues throughout the county. Between 11 a.m. and midnight on Interstate 41, we had 22 other crashes and assist motorists. On 76, we had 24 crashes and assist motorists. We had a state patrol squad that was hit. On A, we had 16 crashes, including a county squad that was hit. The fire begins a secondary search of the vehicles at 12:43. EMS command reports everyone is accounted for. We get permission from the city of Neenah to use their garage site, and then several buses of ambulatory vehicle occupants arrive at Stars Cabaret and Neenah Menasha Fire Station 31 for warming. We also used our chaplains. They self-reported or asked, should we come in, and several of them did, and now we'll never forget them, because they were taking care. You know, we can't be emotional during the event. It's just, it would lead to chaos. So they were taking care of the emotional piece of it while we took care of the informational piece of it. And truly, I'm so glad that they were there and they're part of our agency. We asked for somebody from Regional Incident Management, Manager Coordinator, the RIMC, to respond. He has a lot of resources and a lot of things available that the state has for assets. One of the things we considered was using the National Guard's response team. In 4 hours, they can have approximately 100 soldiers with vehicles, and we could have used them. But things really transpired pretty quickly, so we didn't have to go that route. The queue is that vehicles behind the crash are cleared by 1:30 and 1:42. A few uninjured occupants are still on the interstate, staying warm in their cars, and then removed by buses. 98% of the occupants are off within 2 hours of the first 911 call, and then within two and a half hours, the last remaining occupants are off the highway. The Lutheran Church was opened as a reunification site. You know, that's something we recognize from a lot of the training we do with active shooter, reunifying parents with their children. I mean, it's chaos, right? But the same thing applies here. Most of those people left their phones, their purses, everything in their vehicle when they exited. Family members are calling and they're getting nothing, so they're assuming the worst. So once we put that out, the people are flooding there for that reunification, and it worked out very well. We confirmed that it's over 100 units that are involved. We completed a search of all the snowbanks along the concrete walls. I mean, that snow was deep, very deep. So we're concerned that did we miss someone? Making sure that we had everybody accounted for. 6:38 p.m. the last vehicle is removed from the highway. Some more photos. Total number of units involved in the crash was 119. We had originally reported, I think, 131. There were some non-contact vehicles that, at NASCAR, you're trained to drive into the crash, right, and everything will separate. Well, it must have worked for some people because they actually drove through the crash. And they were still on scene when we were there, but then took off, as things began to transpire, but didn't have any damage to their vehicle. Total number of occupants was 232, and as you know, 71 patients were seen at 6 hospitals. 9 people later self-presented with a total of 80 injuries reported that day and night. And then our report that we sent to the state reported 144 people with injuries that they reported later. They were sore or whatever it might be. And unfortunately, Andrew Schfelker passed away during that crash at the age of 30. He was outside his vehicle. He was a guy that, wanted to help. And unfortunately, that you need to stay in your vehicle. The vehicles are designed to withstand the crash and the continued crashing, and that's why we only had 1 fatality. But he wasn't the only one that was out of the vehicle. It was just, unfortunately, an incident that occurred. But certainly taking nothing away from what he did in his life prior to this as a teacher, but also what he tried to do that particular day. We completed the investigative report at 11:18 p.m. that night, fully opened at 2:45 a.m. We're scooping out a lot of snow, and a lot of car parts were in that snow, so that is now melting, and we're picking stuff up from the site at Neenah. We dumped it all there. They were kind enough to let us do that. It was closed for 15 and a half hours, and then northbound side remained open. These are some more photographs of carnage. We had 32 deputies from the sheriff's office, with an additional 8 deputies and administrators coming in to help with calls in the county. 6 dispatchers working the crash, plus an additional 2 came in to help. Some self-reported, many self-reported. And then 5 other law enforcement agencies provided 29 additional officers and CSOs to help with the scene, the detour traffic, and evidence gathering. We had 14 ambulances, 13 fire apparatuses, 21 paramedics, 8 EMTs, 69 firefighters, most of them cross-trained as first responders, and they performed 20 vehicle extractions. They won't have to practice that for a while. 24-hour period, dispatchers saw a 212 increase in phone call volume and 246% increase in radio traffic. And that was only for the frequencies associated with the crash. And you can see, if you look in the upper left, that is the squad you see with the lights on. Then 30 seconds later, that's all you see. And that's how this crash happened. You know, we are not in charge. Mother Nature is in charge, and forces beyond our control. You know, is speed a factor? Is driving too fast for conditions? Certainly, you know, we can do things to slow down. We can do things to minimize the chances of things happening, but this is really the cause of the crash. Law enforcement that was involved, State Patrol, DNR, Neenah PD, Oshkosh PD, Fox Crossings, Appleton PD, Green Bay PD, and Centralia, Illinois Police Department. They did the death notification. And EMS involved, Gold Cross, Oshkosh Fire, Kokona Fire, Ripon, Guardian Ambulance, North Fond du Lac, Fremont, Wolf River EMS. Fire, Town of Neenah, Town of Oshkosh, Algoma, Vinland, Fox Crossings, Oshkosh Fire, Neenah, Menasha Fire. The other agencies, RIMC, the Highway Department was instrumental in not only stopping, preventing a further crash or a further incident, but then the cleanup afterwards. Emergency management assisted with opening a call center, coroner's office, the chaplains, National Weather Service, and City of Neenah, the Teller Road garage site. The hospitals involved, Fox Valley Healthcare, Ascension, Mercy, St. E's, Aurora, Theta Care Medical, Neenah and Appleton, and St. Vincent's and Green Bay. All the tow companies, Expert Nolte's, Felix, Wilson's, and Lawrence, and the private partners, Stars Cabaret, Keller Coach, Cobuson, Quick Trip, Gloria Day Lutheran Church, Red Cross, and many other hotels for stranded non-local persons. That's our Teller Road site. Looks like a junkyard. Now, those are the piles. They don't look that big, but they were big. And those are all car parts you see sticking out of there. That's what that's the sketch that was done, that's sent into the state. And every one of those little cars on there has a driver, passengers, all the information in that vehicle or about that vehicle. And it's a super huge report. We broke their tracks software. So the public information request, so we tried to do, like I said, as much social media posting as we could. We did 2 press conferences on the day of the crash and then one afterward. Printed releases with some body-worn camera footage, and then additional as time goes on. And then on the 28th, we do a printed release, trying to get out as much information as possible so there's not misinformation. If we don't get out in front of it, somebody's going to make it up. And that's that. I will tell you that the radio system that you all supported, many of you supported, was instrumental in making sure that this was a successful event. We were able to take that entire crash, put it on separate frequencies, and control it. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to even talk on the radio. So there were a lot of success stories, but there are some things that we can do better, and we'll work on that. We'll be sharing this with the entire state because we all want to learn from each other, and we'll look for their input as well. Our after-action review with everybody is next week, and you know, if you're interested to know what the results of that are, certainly I'd share that with you. There are some things that will change that we would have done differently, but all in all, you know, pretty successful. Unfortunately, one person perished in the crash. Any questions?
We'll open it up for questions. I do see one light, actually a couple lights. So I'll call on Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Konecki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, two questions, and you may have answered one. Do you feel like there are things that you learned at this crash that you'll be able to help other facilities? I think you said that you probably would be sharing this information.
Yes, it will be shared with not only all the agencies involved, but, you know, outside of that, we will present at state conferences. We've been asked to present at state conferences already, so we'll share all of the information as you see it. Then we'll also share what we would have done differently and what we're going to change.
And the second thing was, I had seen some of this on Facebook, some of this body cam stuff, and I remember hearing the woman's voice who said, "Keep talking, I'm coming for you, I'm coming for you." Is that the deputy you have with you tonight?
Yes. No? That's not?
It's
oh,
not-
oh, you. No. You saw it on the video, though. Yeah.
I
I'm
could hear
sorry.
her, but that's not you.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Konecki, followed by Supervisor Warnke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Officer Mark, I have not heard or read of any negatives about all the respondents. I know there's more than you two guys, officers here, but I have not read anything or heard anything negative. All the people that volunteered, helped out, you guys did a great job.
Yeah, well, if you dig deep enough, you'll find probably some negative comments in general, but yeah, I am extremely blessed and to be part of this organization. Not just the sheriff's office, but all the first responders here as well. So it speaks volumes.
Thank you, Supervisor Konecki. Next speaker is Supervisor Warnke.
Sheriff, I was just kind of curious, how did you stop the traffic from entering this area?
Well, the plow helped us a lot. And then we set up squads, continue to set up squads back to the detour spot and closed ramps and social media, signboards. Everything that we had at our disposal was used to let people know not to come down that area. People still tried to come down the frontage road. That was one of the issues we had. You know, they plugged up the frontage road, which is where we were putting all of our support vehicles, so we had to clear them out. And that was one of the things we would change, I think, if we could do that quicker.
I'm just curious, thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Warnke. Seeing no other call-ins, I just want to say thank you, certainly Sheriff, the entire department, all the responders. And thank you, not just for this incident, but frankly for what you all do each and every day to keep us safe. Appreciate it very much. Okay, so moving on down, that completes our presentations for this evening, so we'll move on to the next items on the agenda, which are the zoning reports and ordinances. And the first one is a mandatory ordinance number 1. Town of Vinland, on behalf of the Town of Vinland, rezoning to R1 Rural Residential District for tax parcel number 026-0159-01. I'll call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of a mandatory ordinance number 1.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on a mandatory ordinance number 1? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next ordinance. That's a mandatory ordinance number 2. Town of Vinland, on behalf of the Town of Vinland, rezoning to B1 General Business District for parcel number 026-0239-03. I'll call again on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of mandatory ordinance number 2.
There's a motion and a second to approve a mandatory ordinance number 2. Any discussion? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next item, and that's a mandatory ordinance number 3. Town of Winchester, on behalf of the Town of Winchester, rezoning to R1 Rural Residential District for tax parcel number 028-0839. Once again, call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of mandatory ordinance number 3.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on a mandatory ordinance number 3? Seeing none, once again, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next item, and that's a mandatory ordinance number 4. Town of Winchester, on behalf of the Town of Winchester, rezoning to A2 General Agriculture District for tax parcels number 028-0976 and 028-0977 and 028-0723-08. Once again, call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of mandatory ordinance number 4.
There's a motion and a second to approve a mandatory ordinance number 4. Any discussion? Once again, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the final mandatory ordinance. That's a mandatory ordinance number 5. Town of Clayton, on behalf of the Town of Clayton, for amendments to the town zoning ordinance, Chapter 9, Article 7, Division 4, Conditional Use Code. Once again, call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of mandatory ordinance number 5.
There's a motion and a second to approve a mandatory ordinance number 5. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the zoning reports and ordinances, so we'll move on down to resolutions and ordinances. The first one is resolution number 112-032019, commendation for Debbie Snyder. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of Resolution 112-3-2019. Commendation for Debbie Schneider. Debbie started working for Winnebago County in 1978 as a photo machine operator for the Circuit Court. In 1980, she became a clerk typist 2 for the Social Services Department and has spent most of her career with what is now the Human Services Department, holding several different positions. For the past 3 years, she has been an economic support specialist. Debbie helped literally thousands of Winnebago County residents in her various positions. Over the years, she had hundreds of coworkers and a dozen or so different bosses. Through it all, Debbie remained a loyal county employee and served the citizens of Winnebago County in a helpful, friendly manner. After 40 years of county service, Debbie retired on March 8, 2019. She will now be enjoying some well-deserved travel and spending time with her 3 daughters and her grandchildren.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. There was a motion, a second, to approve the commendation for Debbie Schneider. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So moving on down to the second resolution, and that is resolution number 113-032019, disallow claim of Luder's Power System. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of Resolution 113-03-2019.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 113-032019. Any discussion? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the third resolution. That's resolution number 114-032019. Disallow claim of CRW Insurance, otherwise doing business as Tim Lund. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for approval of resolution number 114-03-2019.
On behalf. There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 114-032019. And I should have said otherwise on behalf of Tim Lund. So there was a motion and a second. Any discussion in regards to the resolution? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item. That's ordinance number 115-032019. Amend section 11.11 of the General Code of Winnebago County. Amend Appendix A, Winnebago County Public Health Department Permit Fee Schedule. I'll call on Supervisor Norton.
I move for the adoption and approval of Resolution 115-032019.
There's a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 115-032019. Was there a second? There was a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to the fifth item. That's resolution number 116-032019. Authorize execution of a 5-year agreement with the Oshkosh Area School District for use of the Community Park softball diamonds. I'll call on Supervisor Konecki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of Resolution 116-032019.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 116-032019. Any discussion? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 117-032019. Approve contract and fee structure for bulk image sales of real estate documents. I'll call on Supervisor Wingren.
117-32019.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 117-032019. Any discussion? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution, the following page. Resolution number 118-032019. Authorize the Winnebago County Highway Department to accept $1,100,000 for 2018 from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation to build a salt storage facility on Racine Street and US Highway 10 in the city of Menasha/Village of Fox Crossing and appropriate the funds to other operating expenditure category. I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 118-03-2019.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Brun.
I'd like to have a correction on the amendment, as that is not in the city of Menasha whatsoever, and I'd like that stricken from that resolution, where it should reflect just Village of Fox Crossing.
Okay, so that would be in two items. That would be in the title, where it says US Highway 10 in the city of Menasha, Village of Fox Crossing. It would only say in the Village of Fox Crossing. And then on line 14, it would remove City of Menasha. It would simply say, and US Highway 10 in the Village of Fox Crossing.
Correct.
Okay, I'll take that as a friendly amendment. Okay? We'll take it as a correction. Thank you, Supervisor Brun. Next speaker, Supervisor Locke.
I was just wondering that the salt building that they already have there, what, are they building another one, or?
I'll call on the Highway Commissioner. He's in the back and he can answer your question, Supervisor Locke.
The existing salt storage facility that was located along Highway 441 has been demolished with the 441 reconstruction project. So this is a new state-owned salt shed.
Yesterday.
Not,
Cemetery?
yeah, that's the new state storage salt facility that we built.
This one
Mhm.
already built?
Yep.
Oh. Okay.
I think what she's basically saying is it's already there now, it just was recently
It's
put up.
already
I
built.
think that's what she's trying to say. Thank you. And thank you Supervisor Locke. Any other discussion? All right, well, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next item. That's resolution number 119-032919. Authorize $6,900,000 for the Winnebago County Highway Department's 2019 Annual Infrastructure Capital Improvement Program and $400,000 for parking lot capital improvements to be funded with bond proceeds. I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 119-03-2019.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 119-032919. Any discussion? I'll call on first Supervisor Norton, followed by Supervisor Iden.
Thank you. Actually, mine is more a parliamentary inquiry, that the next several have to do with capital expenditures. Based on what we learned before, it's going to take every one of us, 27 of us, to vote for this. And if one votes for it, it's defeated, right?
That would be correct.
So can that one person or any people who vote against it bring it back next month?
Yes, I believe you can.
And I guess I support probably all of them, but I didn't notice on one of them, one of the committee members opposed it. So do we want to take them all up now, or do we want to wait till next month when we have, hopefully, the 35 members we have? That's the question I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Or you would have the opportunity, as Supervisor Albrecht had referred to earlier, to suspend the rules, to change it from a 3/4 vote of the membership to 3/4 vote of the members present. You can always choose to suspend your rules if you...
Do I have to do it for every individual resolution, or just...
You as a body would get to decide that. You could decide to suspend the rules for this specific resolution, or you could make a motion to suspend the rules that all resolutions that require a 3/4 vote of membership on the agenda tonight will only require 3/4 votes of those present. You would
I'll
have to
make
make
that
that a motion saying for all of those that would otherwise require it.
I'll try and
on
make
the
that
agenda.
motion right now. I'll make that motion.
Okay. There's a I think he wanted to vote on that because you wanted to suspend the rules because that potentially applies to this.
Each and every one, yeah,
resolution.
because there may be one or two that may go 27-0, but we may have one or two go 26-1, and then I'm in a conundrum. Do I vote yay because I want to pass it, or I vote nay because then I'll bring it back next month? Why don't we just treat them all the same way and have it by the, hope to turn around, those who are here now rather than the membership? That's what my intent is for all of them, yes.
Okay. So was there a second? Yes. I believe there was a second. So that motion takes precedent right now, and I just wanted to let you know that is not debatable, okay? So a motion to suspend the rules is not debatable, and it would require a 2/3 vote. Certainly, Supervisor Wingren, you would like some clarification?
Point of order.
Please.
This is against the law. As the county executive pointed out, that's there for a reason. Not a county board rule, but a state law, I believe. You can't just overturn a state law because we like it or we fear something might be defeated. There's a reason for that rule here. If you don't like it and you're afraid, I certainly understand Mr. Norton's opinion, then you lay it over till the next meeting. That would be the appropriate thing to do, in my opinion.
And certainly, that's a valid point. We, as a body, can always suspend the rules to decide how we vote on a resolution. Whether or not our voting and changing what is considered a majority or supermajority, whether it affects the law, that I can't answer, so.
Well, then
I
appeal
don't know
to
if
the
this Corporation Council
to
can
rule on
answer that one or not, because that's a different question that you're asking than Robert's rules. I know what you're asking. You're asking whether we approve in this manner, whether it'll meet state law. That's a fair question I can't answer.
I would need to look into this, but I think perhaps to make sure there's no issues, we may want to consider this at next month's meeting. It's just a cleaner way to do it.
Resolution 119 over until April 16th meeting.
Can I,
The summer, they like just check in the summer, there's no problem in the summer. What's the rush? What's the rush?
Okay, so Supervisor Norton, are you okay with withdrawing your suspending the rules?
Well, I'm willing to change my, if I can, Corporation Council, I'm willing to change mine to all the capital projects be voted on next month. That's what I'm doing, all in one block. Why don't we do them all in that one tiny thing? Not just one, this one, but all of them. If I can do that, I'll change my resolution or amend it if I can, but that's what I like to do. I just, I'm not opposing what Supervisor Orbeck wants to do, but why don't we to take all the capital projects and just vote on them next month? There's an easy way you could do it.
So you're effectively advocating what actually Supervisor Albrecht was referring to, simply lumping them together rather than one.
Right.
But otherwise, what you're essentially both requesting to do is postpone to the next business meeting, April 16th, all capital projects that would otherwise be on this agenda to be voted on April 16th. That's what you both
Right, if I can
are
do that,
saying.
that's what I do.
Is that accurate, Supervisor Albrecht?
Yes. I think there's one, the last one, I mean, there's something where the elevator breaks down all the time. That's kind of important.
Yeah. Okay, so there was a motion and there was a second, actually, to that motion, okay? What's that? Yeah, but he withdrew his, okay, you withdrew the suspension of the rules, correct?
Well, okay, I'll compromise a little bit. I'll compromise in that I'll do what the Supervisor Albrecht wants, but if you allow me to have another motion to the other ones, except for the last one, the elevator one, we vote on next month. I'm willing to compromise that way.
Okay, so first, you're withdrawing the first one, okay? So just to clarify, we're withdrawing, we are no longer talking about suspending of the rules, okay? So then the motion was to postpone to the April 16th meeting all other capital projects on the agenda this evening, up to but not including the final one related to elevators. That's what you're saying, correct? And I believe that's actually what Supervisor Albrecht was also. Correct. So we would, so I'll restate it, okay? The motion would be to postpone resolutions, let me make sure I have it right here, number 119-032919 through resolutions number 124-032019 to the April 16th business meeting. And that's a motion and a second. Okay, very good. So Paul has something in there. Please go ahead. So, but it's got to be on the motion to postpone to April 16th.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Okay, that motion fails for a lack of a second. So we are back on the motion to postpone to April 16th. Supervisor Singstock.
Mr. Chairman, there's a typo on that resolution number. 119-1, Mr. Chairman.
There's a typo. Can you point that out, Supervisor Singstock?
They got 2919, and it should be 2019.
Oh, yes. So what are you saying is the actual resolution number should be resolution number 119-032019. Thank you for pointing that out, Supervisor Singstock. So any other discussion on the motion to postpone? I see a number of lights, so I just want to make sure, but I suspect these aren't on the motion. But the next light is Supervisor Keller on the motion to postpone.
My question has already been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Keller. Next speaker is Supervisor Snyder on the motion to postpone.
No.
Okay. Supervisor Konecki, anything on the motion to postpone?
Is this contingent on how many people show up at the next, and that we vote on it?
The answer to that would be the board would decide at that point.
next month.
Thank you, Supervisor Konecki. Next speaker is Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want a question on Resolution 119, only because I am familiar with that one, having been in that department. I'm wondering if I know there's a lot of planning involved in these kind of things, and that gets going already, and I'm wondering if holding this one off, I would ask for Ray to comment on that, if that'll be a problem.
Highway Commissioners in the back, please.
Given the risk of not having the motion pass, I would say that the April 16th meeting would be perfectly fine with me.
Thank you, Commissioner Pallone. And then just verifying Supervisor Wingren, it was from the beginning, but I just wanted to make sure, did you, any questions on it? All right, thank you, Supervisor Wingren. All right, seeing no other call-ins, we will vote on the motion to postpone resolutions 119-032019 through resolutions number 124-032019, and we will do that by our roll call, our pads. So if you could please press aye if you approve of the postponement, vote no if you don't. And just so you know, that would require a majority vote. And that motion carries 26-1. So all of those resolutions are postponed to our April 16th business meeting. So we have one more item on the agenda. That is the final resolution. That's resolution number 125-032019. Authorize a capital project for the Winnebago County Facilities and Property Management Departments to upgrade the controls and functionality of the 3 courthouse elevators at a cost of $795,000 to be funded with bond proceeds. I'll call on Supervisor Keller.
I move approval of Resolution 125-032019.
Thank you. There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht.
I didn't mean, I thought I pushed it back off. I don't have anything to say.
No problem. Thank you, Supervisor Albrecht. Next speaker, Supervisor Powers?
No?
No? All right, very good. Any other speakers? Seeing none, we will go ahead and do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That completes our resolutions for tonight. So once again, resolutions number 119-032019 through 124-032019 will be on the agenda for April 16th. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht.
I move we adjourn until April 16th.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn until April 16th. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone.